Well, if it isn't the world-renowned victor of the rat-eye tourney, Henry of Skalitz.
I've got that necklace.
Excellent news! I'm not going to ask you how you did it. Here's a reward for you. Now you can carry on with your next task. I want you to sneak the jewellery into Carolina's trunk along with this letter.
Can't I just hand them to her?
You cannot. Under no circumstances must she find out who sent them. Otherwise the whole secret admirer ploy is fucked. Oh, and by the way, Henry, watch out for the butcher. He keeps a very close eye on his daughter, and if he catches you sniffing around, well, may all the saints preserve you. Once you've delivered the things, wait a day, and then come back and see me. Take care.
What the hell was that?
Welcome, Henry. Greetings. What business have you?
I delivered the things as you asked.
I already know. My spies told me everything. She was wearing the necklace this morning, as I asked in the letter.
So you'll go to the rendezvous with her?
Certainly not. I'm not going to pounce on her like a bull in rutting season. Her feelings must be allowed to mature gradually. Meanwhile, you'll get a potion for me.
I thought you didn't believe in witches' brews.
This is no witch's brew. It's an absolutely tried and tested elixir called Musk of Infinite Allure. There's a fellow in Sassau who sells it, and he guarantees its success.
Musk of Infinite Allure? Sounds irresistible. All right, I'll try and get it for you.
I'm sure I can rely on you. Here's some coin for your costs.
Good luck, then.
Well, well, who have we here?
Ah, the prodigal son returns. I knew you'd come back to me one day.
Let me guess, you saw it in a dream?
I knew you were going to say that.
But I had a divine revelation. That next time I won't be around to pull you out of the shit.
Oh, well, I am sorry. But these things are sent to try our fortitude in the face of adversity.
I'd like to try your fortitude. I've heard you know of some irresistibility potion or whatever it is.
Ah, naturally, Musk of Infinite Allure, an age-old recipe, maybe even older, tested by Moses himself.
Moses?
How do you think he managed to get his people to follow him through the desert for 40 years? It's extremely potent.
Yeah, so it would seem. How much do you want for it?
Who do you take me for? The wisdom of the ancients isn't something that's bought and sold in the marketplace. Did Jesus charge for his miracles? But since you ask, how about this much?
What? That much? You're a crook.
As King Solomon said, honesty is for those who can afford it. If you like, I can mix the elixir for you in exchange for a small favor.
Oh, not again.
Now, is that any tone to use with your master? For shame.
Apologies, Master. I was carried away by my thirst for knowledge.
I understand your impatience, but the way to wisdom is narrow and arduous.
And leads out the window. So what is it you want from me now?
Ah, my dear apprentice, everything's gone to the devil. I'm living from hand to mouth, sleeping on straw. and the local peasants won't buy from me. They say they don't trust me, as if I were some kind of charlatan. Can you believe it? Does this look to you like the face of a swindler? I'm an honest trader in sacred goods, whose only concern is the welfare of troubled souls. And any time now the slanderous gossip will spread here from Sassau. I should leave before things get worse. But I can't go anywhere until I've made a bit of coin. So what's needed is to give the locals a bit of encouragement, to open their hearts and purses.
I'm not going to go around beating people for you.
What do you take me for? I wouldn't hurt a fly. Violence is for the dull-witted. We must gently demonstrate to them the necessity of buying my remedies. For example, to ward off a revenant.
Revenant? What revenant?
The dead, returned from the grave. A corpse that the soul is unable to depart from, which wanders among the living, filled with rage at its wretched fate.
Yeah, I saw something like that once. But it was just some drunk going home from the tavern after losing all his money at dice.
Don't make light of such things. Now tell me, do you know how to deal with a revenant?
Garlic and a crucifix should be enough, right?
Those are things everyone should have, to repel malign spirits and other evils. You are my trained apprentice, but the ignorant villager is entirely at a loss how to deal with such dark forces. It is our sacred duty to prepare them for such threats.
And how do you propose to do that?
Well, they're all doubting Thomases. They need proof. We'll need a grave, an empty grave that we can use. There's one along the way to Sassau, but it's got one minor shortcoming.
What's that?
Well, it's not entirely empty.
Not entirely? What does that mean?
You have to dig it up first.
Why this particular grave?
The locals don't like to talk about it, so it's surely got some sinister past behind it. And in places like that, revenants sprout up like mushrooms after rain.
Well, if that's how it is, we could open old wounds. That could easily set people against us. Again.
Then it would be best if no one could connect us to it, wouldn't it?
But that's a sin.
Refusing to help the needy is also a sin. I haven't had a decent meal for 40 days and 40 nights.
My conscience is clear where your stomach is concerned. Disturbing a grave is a grave sin.
The grave is not in hallowed ground, so that's hardly worth one Lord's Prayer in penance. I asked a priest once, just out of curiosity.
I'll need a spade, then.
Yes, dig it up and remove the remains, leaving no trace.
And what am I to do with the remains?
Keep them. Human remains are always handy to have around.
Great. And how do we spread the word of this revenant?
There's a gossip in every village. Here, too, a woman who'll spread news quicker than a dozen messengers on the fastest steeds.
And what am I to tell this gossip?
All you have to do is casually mention the empty grave, and before evening, I'll wager the whole village will know about it.
Where does this woman live?
The last house on the left, on the road to Sassau. She was the first person I met here, and by the time I reached the village green, I already had a mob looking suspiciously at me. The rumor-mongering fishwife.
And that's all?
Not quite. You should ask her who was buried there. So we've got a story to work with.
So, dig up the grave, talk to the gossip.
And the remains. Don't forget to remove them. Otherwise, no one will believe in the Revenant.
I might have known any task for Capon would turn into some insane escapade. Grave robbing. Jesus. God be with you, good wife. Has something happened here?
Heavens no. It's quiet here, unlike some other places.
And what about that empty grave?
What empty grave would that be now?
The one beyond the village, alongside the road to Sasau. Just by the river, on the Pine Headland.
How would you know it's empty, unless it was dug up?
Oh, it's dug up, all right. Freshly. And empty. I saw it with my own 2 eyes.
Lord in heaven, what in the name of...
How come it's not in hallowed ground, anyway? Only unrepentant sinners are buried like that. Usually.
I don't like to say. It's an old wound that's best forgotten.
Whose grave is it?
Well, once a long time ago there was a young charcoal burner living here with his wife. There was always a lot of charcoal burners here, but this fellow worked alone. That's not an easy job for one man.
Well, no one wanted to work with him, or what?
Ah, he was a hard-headed fellow who always wanted to take care of his family himself.
Well, only then you've no one to blame but yourself if you end up alone.
His wife was expecting, though no one knew it yet. And he wasn't doing well at all. Soon enough they had nothing to eat. And so he took to thieving.
Well, I can understand him. To watch your family suffer like that. What could he do when they were going hungry?
If we'd known how badly off they was, folk would have helped out. But he kept his troubles to himself.
And did he get caught?
Well, at first it was just a few eggs going missing from people's hen coops. But then it was anything that wasn't nailed down. And in the end, they caught him.
And I suppose he was harshly punished for it.
Even then he didn't let on why he was doing it. They whipped the skin off his back and banished him from Ledetchko.
So justice was done then?
It wasn't enough for some folk. When the butcher found out he'd never get any compensation, he wanted them to chop off the charcoal burner's hands. If the bailiff hadn't talked sense into him, he'd have done it himself with his cleaver.
Well, he got off lightly enough then.
And in the end, he got what was coming to him, and more.
The butcher caught up with him?
No. It was the mills of God turning slowly but surely. His wife bled to death in childbirth, and the child died with her.
God have mercy on their souls.
Amen.
Nothing could have been done to save them.
There was no one there. He had no one who would care for his wife. They say on that day he parted ways with God forever, and he turned his back on the village too. I reckon he never forgave himself, nor us either.
The Lord moves in mysterious ways. But how did he end up?
Don't ask me that, lad. I beg you.
Come now, good wife. You can't leave the story unfinished.
I said no. Will you let it lie?
I know who was buried in that grave. A young charcoal burner.
So begins the tragic tale of the young charcoal burner who became entangled with the devil himself.
Oh, don't start. What devil? I'm trying to tell you... He was from Ledechko. He was trying to eke out a living for himself and his wife, but he couldn't manage. When she fell pregnant, he took to stealing.
Pride drove him from the straight and narrow path, and soon he sold his soul to the devil to fill his stomach.
They caught him and punished him, but some of the people he'd robbed didn't think it was enough. Then when his wife died in childbirth, and the child too, he blamed everyone for it. Even God, apparently.
But when the time came to pay his debt to hell, the devil had no use for his soul, and took his wife and child instead. The charcoal burner cursed God, who struck him down in righteous vengeance. But the dead man's soul never left his body. He came back as a revenant to vent his rage at God and men and take vengeance on the living.
Jesus, did you listen to what I said at all?
Sorry, did you say something?
Oh, never mind. What do you want me to do with it?
Well, the question is, what would the revenant do to get revenge on the villagers? Well, apprentice?
The gossip mentioned the butcher. It seems he was infuriated that the charcoal burner's punishment was too lenient.
And the revenant spoiled their meat with his malign touch.
How's that?
Spoiled meat is a classic example of a revenant's power.
I thought it was the work of bad butchers.
That too, sometimes.
So, I should switch the good meat for bad at the butcher's.
But make sure it's the same kind of meat. Not even a revenant will turn a cow into a chicken.
He was stealing food from people, right? So, supposing he started again.
We should steal from people? Disgraceful. Have you no shame?
Maybe just a few eggs from hen coops, like the gossip mentioned.
Well, that wouldn't be too serious a sin. Will they put it down to the revenant, though?
They would, if I put some charcoal there instead.
And their nourishment he turned into ash.
What about his wife and child? No doubt he'd want to avenge their death.
Well, how did they die?
In childbirth.
And when his love turned to rage, the water turned to blood. Nothing too original, but it's tried and tested. If you do it at the baths, everyone will hear of it.
How am I supposed to do that? It might be a bit suspicious if I'm seen walking around with a pail of blood.
No problem. There's a certain potion that will do the trick easily.
He cursed God. That's very serious.
What is it that most brings God to mind?
They don't have a church there. But everyone will have a rosary. I can't think of anything else.
That's it! If folks start losing their rosaries, they'll have sleepless nights over it.
You want me to steal rosaries? But that's...
Or just exchange them.
For what?
For nothing.
Great.
So, switch eggs for charcoal, switch the meat, color the water in the baths, and switch the rosaries. That ought to do it. I hope so. Of course, if you come up with anything else, don't let me hold you back. Talking to people might give you ideas. Traders, the bailiff.
Well, what if someone sees me in the act?
They mustn't. Otherwise, it'll end up like Sasau all over again. Don't draw attention to yourself, or they'll put two and two together.
Sure. I'll keep my head down. And how will I know if I've succeeded? I doubt it'll be announced on the market square.
I'll be the first to know. They'll come running to me for a remedy, like hens at feeding time. Off you go and raise hell.
But whatever he did, don't you think he deserves some peace?
Dear Henry, after all the poor wretch went through, I'd say he's beyond any peace.
Well, he certainly won't have any as long as I'm carrying his bones around with me.
Ah, but you know who those remains could help.
Help? Who? How?
Me, of course. And I'd pay you a nice price for a revenant's bones.
But there is no revenant.
Not yet. What do you say?
Maybe I should bury him somewhere else.
What are you saying? That would be such a waste. Anyway, if someone saw you, the whole game would be up.
Well, supposing I do it later, when the fuss has died down.
All right, if you must. But I don't know what you hope to get out of it.
At least the poor wretch will have peace at last.
Maybe. As long as you bury him in hallowed ground. Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
Like in Rat-Eye, maybe?
Well, that's probably the nearest. That gossip-mongering crone would know.
True, I could ask her.
If you must. But for heaven's sake, don't even hint to her what you're up to. God be with you.
Good wife.
Yes, lad. What can I do for you?
You know, I can't stop thinking about what happened to that poor wretch.
Have you no consideration for a poor old woman? I told you I don't want to talk about it.
It might relieve you to talk to someone.
Relieve me from what?
Well, guilt.
Guilt? Why should I feel guilty?
Well, clearly something weighs heavy on your soul, just like the other villagers. The older ones. And I'd say it's connected to that empty grave. Well, that wretch returns as a revenant, and no one does anything. It's not just fear, but more like everyone is expecting some punishment that was bound to come one day.
Oh, you might be right. Maybe it would give me some peace in my old age to finally tell the whole story. Several people from the village went to have it out with Lev, but he grabbed an axe and drove them off. He swore if anyone came near him, he'd burn their house down. Then he buried his wife and child in the meadows beyond Leditchcott. I saw him carving 3 statues there.
Lev, you say his name was? What kind of statues?
There's 3 roughly carved beams there, each with a human face, except the smallest, which has no face at all.
For the stillborn child, I suppose. What happened then?
Nothing. He went back to his work, but never spoke to the villagers again. He'd even go all the way to Rattay for food, rather than talk to anyone here.
So he died alone in the end?
Actually, it was the villagers. It was us that killed him.
What? Just on account of his stealing?
No. Not long after, fires started springing up in the village. And when the first house burned down, the folk were very angry.
And of course suspicion fell on Lev.
Everyone was dead certain it was him. They all remembered his words. Do you know how arsonists are punished, lad?
No, I don't.
By burning on the pyre. But no one wanted to waste time with the law. We just went to his house at night, smashed in the door and windows, and threw lighting torches inside. And that was the end of him. But the fires didn't stop.
So he was innocent?
Baked goods fresh
He
from the
was.
oven. Come get 'em.
Well, I won't condemn you for it. It's for God to judge, but... may he forgive you for it.
Thanks, lad. I pray every day for forgiveness, and it's a weight off my shoulders to tell someone.
God be with you.
Rest in peace. Yeah!
What do you need?
You look a bit worried, bailiff.
How can I not be? What with the whole village complaining about ghosts?
Ghosts?
An empty grave that they say a revenant crawled out of. They talk of nothing else.
You don't think there's any truth to it?
No, it's nothing but old wives' tales.
But how come the grave is empty?
You don't need any magic to dig up a grave. A spade will do.
But why would anyone do that? Surely no God-fearing Christian would dig up the grave of some poor soul who hasn't even got the piece of hallowed ground to rest in.
A God-fearing Christian? No.
So you suspect someone?
Could be. There's been a band of good-for-nothing itinerants hanging around recently. They weren't making any trouble, though, so I let them be. But this is going too far.
How do you know it was them?
Who else would it be?
What about the Revenant?
Oh, don't you start. That revenant of yours is nothing but idle hands doing the devil's work. I'd send them packing myself if I had the time and the men.
Supposing I help you get rid of them.
You look like you know how to handle yourself.
But that doesn't mean I have to solve everything with brute force. I'd rather parley.
That's how I like things. Peaceful and orderly. I don't need any bloodshed around here. I've trouble enough with one long-dead corpse. Send them packing and there'll be peace again.
Don't worry, Master Bailiff. I'll be the very soul of discretion.
Then I'll gladly accept your help. Is there anything you need to know?
Who are these people?
Just some itinerants who'd rather roam the roads than do an honest day's work. They're not cutthroats, though, just petty thieves and beggars.
What are they doing here?
Damned if I know, or where they came from. Except for one fella who's from Ledechko. But the rest are from God knows where.
Are they armed?
As much as any thief. Who isn't these days?
Where can I find them?
Last I heard, they were a bit away from the village, across the river by the old mine.
That's all I need to know. I'll get going.
Good luck. God be with you.
What's going on there?
What's up?
What do you want, boy?
The bailiff sent me after you.
Oh, yeah? Oh, I'm shitting myself.
Well, you better take a good look at me and think again.
Oh, all right. What does the bailiff want from us?
I'm supposed to get you to leave.
What's the problem all of a sudden?
Someone hereabouts dug up a grave, and the bailiff reckons you lot are mixed up in it.
Well, sure, might as well blame us for everything, why not? I suppose we burned down Skalitz too.
Don't play the innocent lamb with me. You know what I think?
No, I don't much care.
Well, maybe you ought to.
Oh yeah? Why?
Because I can offer you a job.
Doing what? Don't expect us to break our backs for a few groschen.
Perish the thought. No, it's something more suited to your, talents. I need someone to frighten people a little.
Frighten who?
The Ledechko villagers.
Them lot are already shitting themselves on account of that revenant.
Aye, but not quite enough to suit me.
And how do you want us to do it?
A bit of fire would be good, since the dead man was a charcoal burner. Some flames flickering in the night, that would scare them.
Aye, all the more so since that fellow's accused of arson.
How do you know that?
One of us is from Ledechko. He was only a youngster when it all happened, but he remembers the fires all right.
I see. Well, that should scare them out of their wits then.
You bet it will. So what's in it for us?
I'll put in a good word for you with the bailiff, and he'll leave you be.
What would you tell him?
Well, I could tell him I saw someone else near the grave. Humans, maybe?
Well, that would help, I suppose. All right, deal.
Just make sure no one sees you.
Don't worry. They always turn us a blind eye anyway.
Here I am, bailiff.
So, how did it go?
I talked to those itinerants, and I'm sure they're not mixed up in it.
How can you be so sure?
Well, those lazy beggars. Digging up a grave is too much like work for them.
You could be right. Well, that hasn't helped much, then. I still have an empty grave and no explanation for it. Good luck to you.
Good day.
What's the recipe for that potion you were talking about?
You mean for coloring the water? Ah, well,
Well,
pay close attention now.
I'm all ears.
How love turned to bloodshed. Once there was a knight who, though upright and noble-looking, had a prickly, unapproachable appearance. He fell in love with a fragile young maid, whom he saw with her sisters in a field, all wearing bright red wimples. But he was afraid his prickly exterior would frighten her. So he asked the advice of another knight, a pious and learned crusader, who carried the name of the patron saint of his order with pride. The pious knight told him he would arrange a rendezvous with the maid. All three would drink wine together by the river, and he would help his friend to get acquainted with her. This they did, but the maid fell in love instead with the pious knight. The stern knight was enraged and challenged his rival to a duel. The two fought long and fiercely, but they were equally matched. And so, in the end, they both fell mortally wounded, anguished at the tragedy her beauty had caused. The young maid took a dagger from one of the knights and plunged it into her own heart. Their bodies lay together on the ground, and the blood flowed from them into the river, turning the waters crimson.
I thought you were going to tell me the recipe, not some fable.
It is the recipe. I mean, the recipe is concealed in the story.
What on earth for?
So I don't forget it.
All right. So what does it mean?
I can't remember.
Great. So if you don't know, who does?
You'll figure it out, my loyal apprentice. I remember there are 3 plants in the story, but that's about all. But I know it was a simple recipe. It should be enough to grind the ingredients and brew them together for one turn. So, all you have to do is work out what the ingredients are from the story.
Sure. Why make things simple if you can complicate them?
God be with you.
I hope you're not after eggs,
Eggs? Why?
because they've almost all gone off. Can you imagine the stink?
I don't think I want to.
Terrible it is.
Uh-huh.
Enough to make you retch.
I see.
A diabolical stink. Like you've got a dose of the...
All right, I get the picture.
Aren't you a bit oversensitive?
What was it that trader said about the eggs that went rotten? A diabolical stink? Lamb. And I'll need lots of it if I'm to switch it all. Hang on, this is venison. From roe deer. No wonder it's under lock and key.
This water? Why is it blood? Oh, Jesus. Oh, God, have mercy. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. If it's a bath you're after, I'm afraid you're out of luck.
Oh? How's that?
We're closed. A terrible thing has happened.
Really? What?
The water in the tubs has turned to blood.
Water turned to blood? You're having me on, right?
I wouldn't have believed it myself if I hadn't seen it with my own 2 eyes. Turned to blood.
But that's impossible. How could that happen?
Well, there's been talk that there's a revenant on the loose. Jesus preserve us. People's rosaries are going missing. That's the work of dark forces.
Where did this revenant come from?
There was a charcoal burner who had a tragic fate, and he was buried hereabouts in unhallowed ground. They say he's risen from the grave to take revenge on the locals.
Yeah, I heard of him. What does he want to avenge? The death of his wife?
Hers. And his own, too.
His death? Why? I heard what happened before, but I don't know how he ended up.
I can't tell you that. Some of the older folk still remember, but they ain't keen to talk about it.
Why blood in the baths?
Well, the wife of that fellow who they say has returned from the grave, she bled to death in childbirth. And none of the bathmaids that was here at the time helped her. That's why.
How did this work?
And what about your other services? Are you still doing business?
Aye, for now. Who knows how long, though? What do you need?
Greetings.
So, how am I doing so far?
Good work, Henry. The whole village is shaking in its boots. Soon people won't step outside the door without saying 3 Hail Marys.
Ugh, I'm glad to hear it. I'm beginning to feel haunted myself.
Everyone is talking about how all the butcher's meat went off after being touched by the hand of evil.
What, does this look like the hand of evil to you?
Some folk saw flames of hellfire flickering around the village at night. Great! They have to go to the river to draw water now.
Why's that?
Because their well leads all the way to hell.
Oh, how dreadful.
Did you have something to do with that?
Me? How could I?
Half the village is without rosaries. Someone even wanted to buy one from me.
And did you sell it?
I don't trade in such banal goods. But I sold him a cat's paw.
I didn't know a cat's paw was good for warding off revenants.
Henry, all the goods I have are good for warding off revenants. The baths are closed. No one will tell you why, but everyone is clearly frightened. No one in Ledechko would eat a single egg, even if they had any, because all the hens are hexed.
Well, at least they've got fuel for their fires. So, the job is done, eh?
Not quite.
But you just said the whole village is shaking with fear.
The whole village, but for one individual.
Well, surely that doesn't matter.
That's what I thought too. Only this fellow is giving everyone the benefit of his wisdom. He needs shaking up before he undoes your good work.
But if he's not been scared yet, what more can I do to frighten him?
Well, when he's not hanging around here ruining my trade, he's in the tavern boasting that he'd happily sleep by that empty grave to prove there's no revenant.
Yeah, I bet he would.
Exactly. He just needs a little persuasion. And once he's there, make it the most terrifying night of his life.
Well, what are we waiting for then?
It's best to be well prepared. You ought to find out something about him, so there's no surprises.
The gossip woman?
Naturally. And Henry, before we get to that grave, you can still try and come up with more ways to frighten the villagers. The more terrified they are, the more groschen there'll be in it for me. For us, that is. Goodbye.